My name is David Madison, the 17th of April 2021. I'm an ex-clergy atheist. By the time I had finished my PhD in biblical studies in 1975, my belief in God had disappeared. Atheism has gained momentum, especially in the last 2 decades. Well, more than 400 books have been published explaining in detail the falsification of theism, Christianity especially. Contemporary atheists have stated a lot of blunt truths, hence this series of videos, Cure for Christianity Knockout Quotes. This is quote number 38. Tim Sledge has written several books, including Goodbye Jesus, An Evangelical Preacher's Journey Beyond Faith. But today I want to draw attention to something he wrote in his excellent little book, 4 Disturbing Questions with One Simple Answer, Breaking the Spell of Christian Belief. I'll get to that shortly. God supposedly inspired more than 1,000 pages of Bible, but what he left out is a scandal. In a recent article that I wrote for the Debunking Christianity blog titled, Who Would Want the Christian God Anyway?, I suggested that instead of the book of Ezekiel, for example, more than 50 pages long, God could have included a book of practical wisdom. How many Christians would even miss the book of Ezekiel? There is so much that God could have told us way back then to help us better cope with the world. For example, how to build refrigerators and why, how to build microscopes and telescopes. He could have told us about microbes, why we get sick. He could have included in this book of practical wisdom how to make aspirin and Novocaine. For thousands and thousands of years, humans have suffered so much without this knowledge. Why did God leave us stranded without it? And here is Tim Sledge's comment on this issue, quote, Decent parents protect their kids from danger. If your toddler grabs the liquid Drano container, you don't watch in silence. But that is exactly what God the Heavenly Father had done through the ages. He just watches, invisible and silent. Why? God had been watching silently for thousands of years by the time Jesus had come along. It was late in the game. But couldn't the Son of God, the one described as the great physician, have made a greater contribution to human health than healing a few people while he was on earth? Why didn't Jesus say anything about germs? Unquote. People might say, well, Jesus was a man of his time, which is true. But Christians also claim that he is part of God. Doesn't that mean he should have known more about how the world works than the average man of his time? God certainly isn't blameless. As Tim Sledge says, he watches. He just watches, invisible and silent. And the dreadful examples pile on. In what historian Barbara Tuchman has called the calamitous 14th century, at the time of the Black Plague, bands of desperate flagellants wandered Europe, whipping themselves, beating themselves, hoping to convince God that they were sorry for the sins that had provoked his terrible wrath. Yet God still withheld vital knowledge. He could have answered thousands of prayers with a simple message. It's the fleas, not the sins. Just think of it. A third of the human population between India and England died of the Black Plague. And it was horrendous, painful death. And all that the church could come up with was, we've sinned against God. God is guilty of a far greater sin of not telling humans what to do to stop the plague. It's not nearly good enough, as Tim Sledge says, for God to just watch, invisible and silent. Who needs that kind of God?